Okay, hello. Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome. Letting some people filter in. Been messing with some OBS stuff. Haven't gotten anything finished up for today, but next time I stream, probably tomorrow, I should have some fancy stuff for you all. In terms of pre-stream, I'm trying to get some other kind of plugins and stuff set up. So we'll see. We'll see how advanced we get. But welcome. I'm going to give a couple more minutes for people to filter in here, but we'll be getting started very shortly, so stay tuned. And yeah, not a lot else going on. Hope y'all are doing well. Just tying a few things together here. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. And yes, switch over to the main screen here. And welcome. So, we're not talking about Norsca today, let's talk a bit about the Empire. So I wanted to do this stream sort of as an addendum to the Meta Minutes podcast that I did earlier this week with Aerocrastic. Talked about the Empire. I have that linked in the description down below, so if you guys want to hear me talk about the Empire in a general sense, we basically went through pretty much all the units, heroes, different uses, synergies, kind of general play style, strengths and weaknesses. Would definitely recommend you guys go check that out. And in this stream, I'll just be going over some specific builds that I have, maybe theory crafting some new builds as well. Just kind of showing you guys the process here of the Empire. So let's start things out pretty simple. This is a double griffin build here. You can see we've got Boris up on his griffin. Hold the line for some extra melee defense, and we've also got the White Cloak of Ulrich and the Midland Runefang. Now, I do not have Crush the Weak in certain matchups. Like, this build would probably be pretty good against Beastmen. Like, I've had success with similar builds in the past against Beastmen. Got 4 Empire Knights and 3 Pistoliers to contest the mobile game, along with the support of the 2 Griffins, and obviously Manticore summons on the Amber Griffin here. It's also got Flock of Doom and Wildheart, Power Stone for some additional Winds of Magic, and the nice thing about bringing the Amber Griffin with Boris, and particularly if you were to bring this Crush the Weak, Boris does not have Blood Roar, but the Amber Griffin does have Blood Roar, so if you're using them kind of in tandem together, then you can still get the effect of that, which is going to make Crush the Weak potentially a little bit better. Now, if you did want to bring that against, let's say, Greenskins or Beastmen, you could just come in here and cut some chevrons from these state troops, and that would do just fine. So yeah, Felix is here to provide healing for both. Boris already has his own healing, which is pretty good. The Midland Runefang is actually one of the best healing items in the game. But of course, the Amber Wizard does not have healing. It's relatively squishy, only 50 armor, 3,500 HP. Is really low actually for a monster character. Yeah, good charge bonus, 60 charge, good armor piercing damage especially, but very squishy. So that damage resistance, especially from the helping hands, excuse me, 44%, certainly quite helpful. Yeah, so like I said, Beastmen, I've used this against. Greenskins, it can be decent there as well, although the low numbers means that you have to like beat units pretty quick, which is where the terror bombing comes in. I've used similar-ish builds against Norsca in the past, although you might want to come in and mix Knights of the Blazing Sun, 3 of them instead of 4 Empire Knights, just because specifically they're much better in that matchup. Have to come in here and find some additional points somewhere, but I'm sure we can get it done. Yeah, that's a Boris double Griffin build. Using the Amber Wizard and Boris in tandem. Boris kind of allows you to take a Griffin Lord that, because he has his own healing, you don't necessarily have to allocate resources for, like, let's say, Lore of Life, right? Yes, something is wrong with YouTube notification 1 star. I honestly am just done with it at this point. Like, I'm posting in all the Discords everywhere, and I don't know what to do, to be honest. People just aren't watching, I guess. YouTube just doesn't give a crap about my channel. I really don't know what to do to get live stream notifications to go out to people. Like, I really have no idea. Kind of ridiculous. But anyway, you know, it's one of the reasons why I'm tempted to switch streaming to Twitch, honestly, because Twitch actually will for sure send out notifications when I start live streaming, which YouTube seems to not be able to do ever. So I don't know, to be honest. Anyway, back to what we were talking about before. Let's move on to another build here. Does a Dav Empire build without Pistoliers exist? Probably not, to be honest. They have really good missile damage. Yeah, here's one. So this is a Balthazar Gelt build. This is a build I've used against the Tomb Kings. It's kind of reliant a little bit on Plague of Rust and Pistoliers to help take down constructs. You do also have the Hammer of Witches. I might trade this out in some situations if I don't necessarily want to be tied to a stationary artillery piece, or like if it's a map that doesn't really work with cannons. I'd probably trade this out against the Tomb Kings specifically. With this much, you could even come in here and like pick up a group of demis, perhaps. Something like this, and then you'd put this Warrior Priest on horseback and run him with the Demigryph Knights. Then suddenly you have this ability to nuke, you know, on the charge with the fire damage. You get, this is a synergy I've talked about before, but Cascading Fire Cloak, you get the buffs from the Warrior Priest, and the demis will run in there on the charge and just absolutely destroy. The nice thing here is you've got Balthazar for some additional Winds of Magic as well. He's got Plague of Rust and Searing Doom only, so he can kind of run around, regenerate Winds of Magic, and provide that rust for the Pistoliers to get a little bit more work done. We've also got some Free Company Militia, who they do get a little bit hard countered by skeleton archers, but still they're pretty decent in this matchup. They can fight skeletons just fine, and their volume of fire means that if you get a good Plague of Rust on something like a Ushabti that's trying to fight in your front line, can be very, very nice to just tear them apart quickly. Yeah, I've run this build alternately without Lore of Fire and with just light to give more attack to these flagellants, help them clean up like skeleton and other chaff front lines very quickly. But yeah, the flagellants are there mostly just to hold and to do damage to undead infantry. So yeah, that's kind of a Balthazar fire-centric build. We've also got a Balthazar kite-centric build here. And again, the idea is to utilize Plague of Rust and extra Winds of Magic regeneration. We've got the Amber Griffin primarily for terror, but Wild Heart's a pretty good lore attribute. It does give you a little bit more Winds of Magic and power reserves. And Transformation of Kadan, again, more mobile terror. We've got the Power Stone as well. So it's a little bit risky to have this guy without any healing or anything. He is relatively expensive, but you got to be pretty careful with him. But we've also got Balthazar and a Captain up in the air as well. Captain's got nothing, just the Pegasus. Make him cheap, and Balthazar's got his Pegasus here. So, yeah, the idea here is you Plague of Rust, blast with Pistoliers. We've got grenade launchers to do some anti-infantry work. Empire Knights to kind of hold the line, like be a mobile anvil, if you will, so that the Amber Wizard can come in on like a hammer charge. Of course, Balthazar's also got Searing Doom as well. He can kind of throw out some damage. Same with Flock of Doom. I don't know. This might actually be not the best build in the world. I haven't actually tried this, but I was just thinking, like, if I wanted to make a Gelt kite build, like, this might work. Maybe. Yeah, basically battery with Plague of Rust. Exactly. Yep. And he's actually not the worst combatant in the world. He does have 70 charge bonus on the on his Pegasus. So if you pop Plague of Rust and like multi-charge with all three of these heroes, they're going to do a lot of damage. I mean, the Captain's got 85 charge, the Amber Wizard's got 60 charge, so you can kind of use them as a little bit of an alpha strike squad just because they all have high charge bonus. And I mean, Balthazar is not a complete pushover. He's not the best combatant, but that charge bonus especially is something you can take advantage of, certainly. This is my my really bad Gelt kite build, Belcon. Yep. I haven't actually tried this, but this is just a build I kind of came up with. As far as builds that actually probably work a little bit better, this is a build I might take against Lizardmen. Got Carl up in the air. We've got some Outriders to be kind of mobile handgunners, basically. One unit of Demigriff Knights. Not super sold on them. I might change them out for something else. But Empire Knights kind of act as blockers. We've got some Spearmen with shields to hold the line. Sigmar's Sons. Healer for Carl. Yeah. Again, I'm not super sold on the Demis here, but I do feel like I need some kind of punch in the front line without any warrior priest though to support them. Like, I don't know, it's just kind of thin. I guess I could cut some chevrons from these state troops and try and upgrade this captain to a warrior priest. Probably honestly be better, but I mean, I'm looking like 600 points I would probably need to find somewhere. So yeah, this one could work like against chaos. Against chaos I might actually trade out for Pistoliers, but because Lizardmen don't really have a lot of units that can catch Outriders, like they're pretty safe pick there. They don't necessarily need to like fight other skirmish cav, which is something that Pistoliers would need to do against Chaos or Norsca, for example. So I do prefer Pistoliers in those matchups, although certainly I think you can take maybe a couple Outriders there. So it does exist after all. Yeah, it's just with Outriders. Although, again, if I were to... This is specifically against the Lizardmen. If I were to take this against Chaos, I would come in here and get 4 Pistoliers instead of 3 Outriders. So, yep, it's easily changed. For the Empire, that is kind of how you have to build. There's not really any all-comers builds for the Empire. I mean, there are builds that work well against a multitude of factions, but this is one that I've used against the Vampire Coast. It's a little bit risky if they're going to try and counter rush you, but if they try and sit back at range, like, you can pick them apart pretty well with something like this. Yeah, it's pretty basic. You just go all in on the Vanguard with Huntsman, Free Company. Got the Zintler's Reichsguard also have Vanguard and immune to Psychology, so they can run in, block something with a lot of terror if they have to very quickly, or like just smash Depth Guard, you know, disrupt enemy missile lines. Also got the one Pistolier. Versus Dark Elves. I have a few builds that could work. Generally, it revolves around Volkmar, so let's have a look. Volkmar and Karl are the two most competitive lords, in my opinion, for the Empire. This is one that I have used before to very good effect against the Dark Elves. You have the Fire Demis to kill Malekith if he comes to the ground. They're going to just kind of stick near Volkmar and protect him. Volkmar's got a ton of anti-infantry damage and buffs and stuff. So he can roll around and just absolutely make mincemeat of the Dark Elf lines. Got this kind of mobile spear line, not necessarily super mobile, but they can kind of form up in a defensive formation aggressively, while the Knights of the Blazing Sun will just wall up enemy infantry. We've got Pistoliers to help contest the skirmish game. They're going to be pretty good at just kind of annoying Dark Riders and pushing them away, and I mean, Dark Riders can beat them in melee, but if they try and chase, Dark Riders can't shoot while they're moving, right? The Pistoliers can shoot them in the face, or just generally being annoying in that mobile phase of the game. Something like this I've had pretty good success with in the past. The high charge especially, Knights of the Blazing Sun, I mean, they have magic resistance, so they're good against Warlocks already because of the heavy armor, but I mean, the magic resistance helps a lot there. Soul Stealer, they're also resistant to. Elves just generally don't have a lot of HP. That's true of Dark Elves as well, so you get that high charge with Kindle Flame. And I don't actually have Cascading Fire Cloak. That seems like a mistake for sure. Definitely want that for the demis. Yeah, he also doesn't have a horse. Maybe I need to... some more funds here. Yeah, that looks fine. You get him a horse. There we go. Yeah, you've got Burning Head as well to help roast out light armor infantry, and just in general, the low HP, high charge with Kindle Flame makes Knights of the Blazing Sun, and anything, to be honest, that the Warrior Priest comes into range of with that banner, including the Demigryph Knights, of course. So this is one. This is kind of a Volkmar rush, if you will. To be honest, these Gelt kite builds, you could try something like this. It's going to be pretty tough because you're kind of behind the curve. Like if they go heavy on Cold One Knights, you might have a hard time with this, but I have had builds like this be reasonably successful in the past. Up in the air, if they bring Malekith, you might be in a little bit of trouble if they go really heavy into the air. But then you just kite them, Plague of Rust, and try and use your Pistoliers. You've got Outriders to do anti-infantry damage. Empire Knights might have to sacrifice themselves on some Cold One Knights so that the Amber Wizard can rear charge with Manticores. That would be a good way to win the cavalry fight so that you can have mobility advantage. But this is definitely a more kite-centric, kind of mobile hit-and-run build. 1,000 for a Warrior Priest? Yes, so the Warrior Priest is... he's expensive with that kit, but it's absolutely worth it. He makes the Demigryph Knights, like, beat Malekith in a matter of seconds. Like, I don't remember exactly when it was, but there's a game I had against Hadriz where he landed Malekith to try to take out Volkmar, and I got him pinned on the ground, and those demis came and ate him in like 30 seconds. So... The Warrior Priest is a big part of that. Not only that, but he helps protect them as well with the damage resistance, and if they get caught up on infantry, he's got the Soul Fire to bail them out. It will just blow up a bunch of infantry and stagger them at the very least, as well as doing damage, especially to lighter armor infantry. Yeah, cannon build. Let's see, I think... I don't have a lot of artillery builds here, but let's see if I have anything. I could probably put one together real quick. Let's see. I'm trying to remember. Oh, this is a no, that's Boris. Whoops. I thought that was a Volkmar. Oh, that's not Volkmar. Anyway. Um, this is a Volkmar anti-Bretonia build, specifically. Oh, this might work against the Dark Elves, and it would probably work against the High Elves as well, come to think of it. Dark Elves is a little bit trickier, but you've got the 2 Terror Unbreakable Chariots, 1 ranged, 1 melee support. Got Demigryph Knights, Pistoliers, Spearmen with Shields, Sigmar Sons, Gotrek to protect the Steam Tank. And yeah, but for a cannon build, this is a build. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of Empire like stationary artillery builds. For my own playstyle, I tend to play more into the charge. So take these with a grain of salt. But like this one has 1 cannon. This is a anti-Tomb Kings build. You can go with like 3 cannons as well. So build I used recently against Lizardmen was something like this. Marcus. I had 3 cannons. Was it 2 Outriders, 3 Pistoliers? I think I had I don't even remember what mage I had. We'll come back to that in a minute. Get some Spearmen. We need a couple Empire Knights for blocking. Sigmar Sons, absolutely. And who did I have as a caster? I can't remember. I think it was Lore of Death. Against Lizardmen, though, I guess double nets are banned, so I can't really bring a light wizard to net more stuff. Although that would be okay. Might go with Lore of Shadows to try and penumbral pendulum some different things. Melkos can also help slow down a little bit. I don't know, to be honest. Fire Mage? Yeah, Fire or Death. Fire could be pretty good, actually. If we did something like this. So if we get Fire, probably just keep him on the ground, honestly. We'll do Fireball, Cascading Cloak, and Burning Head. And then let's grab a cheaped out Warrior Priest on foot. Probably keep the leadership buff. I say cheaped out. He's still going to be pretty expensive, to be honest. If we take all of that stuff, which it could honestly be worth it to have all of this stuff. So, yeah, maybe I would actually cut 1 Pistolier. I know. And then, like, rank up these Spearmen a little bit here. Something like that. So then the Warrior Priest can support the front line. He can also, like, in the beginning of the battle, you want him standing near the cannons while you throw fireballs. You can get Kindle Flame off the cannons, and he goes into the front line to help support there. That's a lot of spend for an infantry support character, but, I mean, these are all so good, right? Yeah, Death was the one that I casted before. So something like this would work against Lizardmen. Dwarfs is a bit of a weird one. Yeah, take Franz. That's good advice, honestly. Franz is really good. In like, the monster matchups, I would say, Lizardmen can be a little bit hard, but, like, Norsca, Chaos, even Tomb Kings, like, a Lore of Fire Carl build with Tomb Kings might be pretty good, although... yeah, you need healing for Carl, to be honest. But you can do something, you know, with like a cheaped out Fire Wizard with maybe just Flaming Sword of Ruin. Yeah, how do I decide which Lord and Caster to take? That's a good question. It's kind of just whatever I want to do with that particular build. Like, if I want to bring Lores of Magic besides healing, then it's pretty much always got to be Volkmar or Boris. Like, not necessarily always, but it's pretty important if you're going to be bringing a big, expensive Lord that they can heal. So, like, if you're bringing Carl, I would say for sure you need healing. I guess for some of the generic lords too, like the Archlector, you don't really need healing for them. Same thing with Balthazar, like, he's not that expensive, even kitted out, so... Gelt against dwarves, so there's different things you can do against the dwarves. It's not the best matchup in the world, but actually, on certain maps, the Sunmaker can be pretty decent if you catch the dwarves off guard. Yeah. This thing has a bit of an arc of fire, so you can shoot sometimes back at cannons in situations where they can't shoot you. Just because if it dumps its ammo off so fast, if the dwarfs do end up rushing you, you can still get some pretty good damage out of this. It is very expensive, though. It's a little bit hard to pay for itself sometimes if it gets a lot of the bottles taken out. But, yeah, I mean, unless the dwarfs get pretty lucky, or if they go very heavy into, like, 4 artillery, then you actually can do some pretty good work with this thing. As far as other things to do against the dwarves, a lot of people like the Black Lions there. I'm not really sure about that. I guess you can take out your opponent's cannons. A steam tank, in theory, would be very, very strong, but it's pretty expensive. Do that. Let's see. Thinking about things. Yeah, 1800 cost is a lot for sure. For sure. If you want to challenge the dwarves to an artillery fight, you can go very heavily into that kind of area there. I might take Carl on foot, actually, with his buffs, so that he can help support the infantry fight. He's also not too expensive on foot. I mean, I'm actually going to roll him directly with Felix together. Like, they're going to fight side by side so that he can get consistent healing. Felix, of course, with anti-infantry AP can help clear out dwarf infantry. I don't know that I'd keep helping hands here necessarily. I might hang on to it. Let's put a pin in that and we'll come back to it. As for magic selection, I actually think I'm going to go with Lore of Light here. We don't need the Immune to Psychology map-wide, so we're going to cut that. But Foz Protection and Shem's Burning Gaze I will keep along with Barona's Time Warp. And we'll probably grab the Power Stone as well. Again, no need to go on any mounts. We'll just take him on foot. And then from there, could do a few different things. Let's get some swordsmen just to kind of contest. Let's get some great swords. These guys will be good recipients for that, what is that thing? Well, Franz, for number 1, he can stand and give them, some extra stuff. Yeah, the Barona's Time Warp as well would be very good for these great swords. Something like that. I would probably want some skirmish cav to run around and harass and be annoying, so maybe grab some Outriders. And would be good to get some kind of ranged units, so I might actually cut 1 cannon here, although if you're going to challenge the Dawi to an artillery fight, I kind of feel you have to go all in. Yeah, if handgunners had a bit more range, they would be meta. I agree for sure. I mean, I guess you could trade these guys out for actual handgunners. I just personally like having the flexibility of the Outriders. They do have lower damage output overall, though. You could even actually grab crossbows. 5 crossbows. I think that's legal, right? Crossbows are not something you see terribly often, but because they're kind of mid-AP and lower cost from handgunners, you can get a greater volume of fire. And not only that, but they have a pretty good arc of fire as well. Let's see, 160 range. They have a little bit longer range than the handgunners also. So, as per your comment there, if they had a bit more range, they would be meta. Crossbows actually, I think they might be underrated here. 6 AP per shot is pretty good, and with enough volume of fire like this, it could potentially work. Again, I have not tried this. This is purely theory crafting. But, I don't know. Maybe something like this might work against the dwarves? Yeah, Thunderers, if we have a look here, I'm curious. I want to say Thunderers have 170, right? In terms of range. So they might even still... Oh, no, only 145. So the crossbowmen can outrange them. whereas handgunners have literally the same range, right? So maybe that's a reason to specifically bring the crossbows in this matchup. Since they buffed the AP values on these guys, they're good in this matchup, I think. I don't know. It's an interesting one. Definitely interesting. And with France's buffs, like these swordsmen, even would probably perform okay. I'm tempted even to go with a different setup here in terms of infantry, but greatswords, I think, just they're okay. They just get crumped pretty hard against a lot of dwarf infantry. They're a magnet for gunfire as well. Yeah, it is just a bit of a bad matchup. You're not completely wrong about that, but I do think it's doable. Like, I think that people are maybe just not thinking of the right things. I do think there's something to this crossbow shenanigans, considering they have slightly longer range. But it's definitely something that needs testing. Let's see. Other Empire builds. Don't know what else I really have saved here. That was all the ones that I had prepared for the meta minutes. Yeah, apparently this is a build. Oh yeah, this is a Carl plus steam tank build. He's on the ground, actually. I don't think this would work super well, but that's pretty thin, honestly. I might clean this up a little bit. Honestly, the one thing about the Empire, one of the reasons I don't have a lot of my builds saved, like I have to go, honestly, on my old videos and look at them sometimes, because I'm just constantly, like, making new builds, and, like, a lot of the time when I'm fighting, I'll just make a build on the spot, rather than using pre-made builds. Like, I'm constantly changing things, being flexible, just because you can do so many different things, right? Are there other tournament Empire mains? I don't know about Empire mains necessarily. Tlaxlan Soothsayer is very good with them. Trying to think of other players who are prominent who are very good with them. Hero of Rome and Imperator are both pretty good with them as well. You do see people like Shetland Apache making good use of the grenade launchers as well, which is not a unit that I've used a ton just because they're very squishy, not very forgiving at all. Very easy to screw up with, but you can use them to great effect, certainly. Yeah, so that's some builds. Talking about some other synergies, halberd variants. Like, I don't end up using the halberd demis much lately because you can see the demigryph knights, the regular demigryph knights, just have better stats overall, and especially +6 melee defense. Doesn't seem like a lot, but I mean, that can make a difference. 6% chance to hit is not nothing. It's a little bit of difference, certainly. And just the fact that they're cheaper means they're a little bit easier to be cost effective, and just in general, a lot of your Empire melee units, like the high damage stuff, comes from the charge, and you really want to be synergizing with that as much as possible, like timing pushes, right? Kindle Flame with Banner of Eternal Flame, pop all the abilities, you know, the Hammer of Sigmar, everything else from the Warrior Priest on those demis at the same time to really get a good timing push, and then you don't want to stay in combat with them because, I mean, even the halberds, they just don't have melee defense for sustained combat. 30 melee defense is so bad for a unit this expensive, and only 38 for the Royal Autogryphites. Like, it's just so much more cost effective to take the cheaper halberd ones and just cycle charge with them like you're supposed to, in my opinion. I disagree. I think Blood Knights are much better than Demigryph Knights. But yeah, the Lance version is the one to go with. You really don't want to be fighting in sustained combat. You want to be cycle charging. And again, these guys have a higher charge bonus. They're going to do just more damage to everything overall. They're 100 points cheaper. You can still get great value out of them. They actually, I think, have slightly higher base weapon damage as well, right? So they get a little bit better value. Let's see, 39 AP versus 35 AP. Yeah, so weapon strength buffs, things like Cascading Fire Cloak, you know, Occam's Mind Razor, those weapon strength buffs are going to be more effective on the Lance versions as well, because they have, you know, a higher base number that they're buffing. So just in general, I've kind of come around to the point where I think halberds are worse in most ways than lances, but that's just me. Yeah. Anti-rush build versus Norsca. So if we come over here to my double griffin build, a lot of people, the biggest trap I see Empire players falling into against Norsca is that they get hung up on missile defense builds. That's not the way to play this matchup at all. You need to play counter rush, right? Norsca is weak to a few things. They don't do great at attrition, but you can't really out-attrition them because they're faster than you and they have high enough attack. You don't really have high enough defense to stand up to that. Now, you do have high enough charge to hit them very, very hard. Now, this build, you've got Knights of the Blazing Sun. They don't necessarily have Kindle Flame, but the fire damage in and of itself is good enough. And of course, again, magic resistance, specifically against Famir, is going to be very helpful. And the idea here is you stay mobile, harass your opponent, draw units out with the Pistoliers, surround and multi-strike with multiple units of Knights of the Blazing Sun. You got Boris, you've got the Amber Griffin, who can potentially summon Manticores as well. So you can have, you know, 3 single entities, 4 single entities, plus Knights, all surround charging it like isolated units. And that's really the way to play it, is to kind of almost counter rush, force asymmetric engagements, and try and sweep units with high charge. Because most Norscan units don't have good armor or melee defense, and they'll get walloped by high charge units. So that's my advice, is to actually counter charge Norsca. It seems a little counterintuitive because you have so many good armor piercing missiles. But this actually works the best in my experience. Like, none of these infantry can stand up to Knights of the Blazing Sun charges. Even Empire Knight charges, to be honest, hurt a lot. And, I mean, even something like Armored Skinwolves, only 70 armor is not that much considering they're weak to fire from regeneration. And they just have bad melee defense. Only 28 melee defense, right? I mean, Famir are a little bit better. 38 melee defense is pretty decent for a monster. 52 for the Miststalkers is actually really good. Yeah, they just don't really have the melee defense. Even like Mammoths, right? Only 30 melee defense. So on the charge, you're basically guaranteed hits, and you're going to be doing a ton of weapon strength because of that massive charge bonus. 78 charge bonus is just so high. Well, it doesn't really matter, cost, who wins one-on-one, because that's not how this game works at all. Blood Knights, the reason they're the best anti-large cav in the game is because they can heal unit models, because they are vampire units. Like, they have access to lore of vampires and about 18 different healing effects, passive healing effects. So, like, there's really no comparison to any other cav in the game, to be honest, because of that fact alone. Not to mention that they also have massive charge bonus, great anti-large, they're essentially unbreakable because they're undead. What else about them? I could go on. They also have the coolest lances in the game, in my opinion. That's just purely an aesthetic thing. They also have Frenzy, giving them an additional charge bonus, right? On top of their already massive base 72, they have this. So if they're not in melee, they get 22% missile resistance. Like, it's no comparison. Yeah, they beat halberds. Yeah, and they have 45 unit models is the other thing. Demigryph Knights have 24. So, yeah, like, a little bit more than half, just barely more than half the unit models. Not great. Knights of the Blazing Sun, on the other hand, have a full 45 models with a fat 78 charge bonus. So, yep, that's a build against Norsca. Hey, Rubber Duck of War. Welcome, welcome. You could also, with Boris, you don't necessarily have to bring the Amber Wizard here. If you wanted to go another direction, you could, if you wanted to bring Lore of Fire here. This is also very strong against Norsca, throwing fireballs just to pick away. You can, like, one-shot unit models of, I think, Ice Trolls and Skin Wolves both will get one-shotted by fireballs, so it's great to just sling those around, Cascading Fire Cloak, and then with this, you could also get like a proper unit of Faith Demis potentially here. We'd have to kind of figure out some costs. I don't think I'd take Benediction in this situation. Yeah, see, like we could cut one of these Knights of the Blazing Sun, come in here and grab one Demigryph. And that gives us a little bit more funds as well. We can come in here, get maybe one more unit of Pistoliers just to contest that mobile game a little bit more, and then get some chevrons on these state troops. A little bit short. I wouldn't agree with that at all. I think that actually Grave Guards are very cost effective. Grave Guards with shields, I should say, are very cost effective. Black Knights, regular Black Knights, the 750 ones, they are very cost effective. Dogs can be just supremely cost effective if they're chasing routing units, which is what they're best at. Yeah. I think there's actually a lot of units on the vampire counts that are the Mortis Engine. Mortis Engine is the only unit in the game I've seen gain more than 5 chevrons in a single battle, which it can, by the way. No other unit in the game even has the ability to do that. So, yeah, I think actually a lot of Vampire Counts units are extremely cost-effective. Corpse carts, you want to talk about cost-effective. The basic Corpse cart is one of the best units in the game, in my opinion. 250 points for a regenerating meat bag with high mass that you can use to block things. It also gives an area of effect plus 5 attack and defense, which is great. And did I mention it's 250 points? And it's a regenerating meat bag that your opponent is going to have to kill at some point. I don't know. I actually think that the Vampire Counts have a lot of really good units. But this is about the Empire. The Empire also has a lot of really good units. Not War Wagons, though. War Wagons are pretty terrible. Other builds? Any other specific questions on matchups, I guess I should say? Talked about a few specific matchups already, but... Luminarch, that's another one for the Tomb Kings, mostly. You can try and use it against the Vampire Counts. It's super risky, though. Yeah. Is there an Empire unit that most consider bad that I love to use? I don't know, to be honest. Like, everyone knows most of these units are good now that I use. At least I would hope. Where's the steam tank? It's right here. Right here. Steam tank builds. So talking about steam tank builds just in general, you definitely want to have healing for your steam tank, so I would always recommend you bring a Jade Wizard. And if you're all going to bring another caster, I would definitely kit him down to just have regrowth. Specifically, he just stands by the tank and regrowths it, or you could even have him stand in the woods hidden somewhere nearby and throwing those regrowths out there. Super cheap just to act as a healer for the tank. Now you can go a couple of different directions with that. You could potentially go with like a Wolfheart, like net and kite build a little bit here. He's going to be pretty decent at that. You can kind of do a long range poke. And with this, you would want some kind of hard hitting punch. Like let's say this is going to be against, oh, I don't know, Lizardmen. I wouldn't take a steam tank against the Lizardmen. Yeah, to be honest, I don't really know the application where I would take Marcus plus a steam tank. Typically, I would actually take some kind of hammer, because the steam tank is shaped kind of like an anvil, right? So if you have a hammer lord, like Carl, although this would require a little bit more healing, so at this point we're going to want to probably kit up on Earthblood as well, or even Shield of Thorns just for physical resistance, because this can actually hit more targets with that. Yeah, we did talk about some Dark Elf builds at the beginning, Koss. Yeah, I talked about Volkmar centric builds, just because Volkmar is so good. Volkmar hard counters a lot of units on the Dark Elves roster. He's very good in that matchup. Basically, you take Volkmar and you take Demigryph Knights with some buffs to support. That's kind of the gist of it. But if you rewind, you can see the specific build. Yeah, for this is something I would probably do against the High Elves here. Something like this. We're going to come in here and grab some Spearmen, and we definitely want Chevrons against the High Elves. I'm probably going to go up to rank 6, I think. Grab the Sigmar Sons as well. From here, we definitely want some Pistoliers for Mobile Harass, and that leaves us enough points for 2 Empire Knights. This is pretty thin. Honestly, you could run into some bad situations if your opponent goes with like 3 Bolt Throwers, for example. That's going to be pretty tough. But most Elf players won't bring, High Elf players won't bring Bolt Throwers in this matchup. Not super common. And even then, if you just like drive around with your steam tank and dodge the shots, or with Carl, like that, eventually they're gonna run out of ammunition, right? So you can just rush as well at that point. You know, with this heavy hitting power. I was gonna put some Demigryph Knights, honestly, with this Warrior Priest, but I think I might just have him roll with the Empire Knights. I don't know, honestly. This is a lot to heal, right? Because this is 3 different targets that need healing. Carl, the Steam Tank, and the Demigryph Knights, potentially. So, I don't know if I really love that, to be honest. Earthblood is a lot more heal efficient in terms of Winds of Magic if you're hitting 4 targets with it. So if you need to heal multiple targets, you want Earthblood, but keep in mind that taking less damage is much better than healing always. If you don't take the damage in the first place, that's always better than healing, right? So in this specific situation, I actually didn't even bring Earthblood. Instead, I have Shield of Thorns to give physical resistance so that I cannot take damage in the first place. Obviously, against certain factions, this wouldn't work super well. Like against Bretonnia, I might actually swap this out for Earthblood, which this would be a pretty viable build against Bretonnia, I think. I would definitely swap that out for Earthblood. But against the High Elves, where, I mean, Sisters of Thorn, not Sisters of Thorn, Sisters of Avalorn, rather, are a little bit of an issue, perhaps, but maybe not. Shield of Thorns can help protect against things like dragons at the very least. Or, you know, regular non-armor-piercing missiles, even things like, or armor-piercing missiles as well, like the Bolt Throwers. Balthazar can have a steam tank mount. I would love that. I would love that so much. I would love a steam tank lord. That would probably be my favorite new lord in the game, to be honest. Lizardmen, I talked a little bit about them. There's a few different things you can do in that matchup, but it's one that I actually have some issues with, and that's more because of my playstyle. Like, this is something that I mentioned on the Meta Minutes podcast, which, if you guys missed at the beginning, this is kind of meant as an addendum to the Meta Minutes podcast I did with Aerocrastic this week. Definitely check that out if you want more Empire goodness. We literally talked about, instead of talking about specific builds, we just talked about the faction as a whole and individual units and synergies and stuff. So if you guys want more Empire, definitely check out that Meta Minutes podcast. I would highly, highly recommend it. Really good stuff in there. Today we're just talking more builds specifically. I kind of wanted to do this as an addendum to that, but Witch Hunters, they're pretty good. Actually, against Lizardmen is one matchup you come to mention it where they can actually be really good because they're just fast enough. 34 speed. I mean, they get caught by skinks, but like Saurus, I don't think can catch them. Let's double check that. Let's see here. Yeah, Saurus, a little bit slower, so they just can't quite catch him. He can kind of kite them around. His Witch Hunter's pistol is very good at shooting infantry. Stuff like, Temple Guard and Saurus especially. He can just pick away models consistently over a long battle. And this accusation is really nice for shooting dinos. Missile resistance and melee defense, especially if you need to shoot like a Slann or any character that has missile resistance. But the armor debuff in particular as well can be very nice. If you've just kind of got a volume of fire presence, something like 4 archers, which might not seem like a lot on paper, with this accusation debuff actually can do a lot of damage to something like a Dread Saurian, for example. And at very, very little cost as well. Especially even more so if you combine it rather with something like Plague of Rust from Balthazar. Come in here with an overcast Plague of Rust, you get minus 90 armor in total. So like a Dread Saurian, for example, is going to be at what, 10 armor? They have 100 base, right? Yeah, 100 base. They'll be at 10 armor, and suddenly these archers are going to shred them, right? It works best against slow monster factions, so like Tomb Kings and Lizardmen are the ones I've had some success with. It's a little bit tougher to make work against the faster monster factions like Beastmen, Norsca, and Chaos. But the missile attack, I would say, is best shooting infantry because it pierces like 3 or 4 models at a time. He can really pick away at infantry, but yeah, that's what I would recommend it for, for the missile debuff especially. Wood Elves is an interesting matchup. There's a couple different ways you can go. You can try and outshoot the Elves, which the Empire can try. Doesn't always work, but you can try, or you can just bum rush. So I had a Volkmar build, I thought, like a mass rush build here. But I guess it didn't save correctly, which is a little annoying. But if we come in here and grab Volkmar on his chariot, I'm actually going to give him a pretty minimum kit this time. We're just going to go with Shield of Faith and Soulfire. Of course, we want the healing as well. Let's cut all the chevrons from these guys, and we're going to actually go as cheap as we possibly can on infantry. So we're probably just going to bring like 4 spears, maybe 5. We'll come back to that in a minute. As for caster, we want a min fire caster, so we'll take him on a horse, probably just with Kindle Flame, Fireball, and Cascading Fire Cloak. Want to try and get as much funds as we can to come in here and just tank up on heavy cav, basically. Yeah, what is that? 8 units of heavy cavalry right there. That's a pretty just smash your face into the keyboard build, but that probably works. Which unit's good for taking out Ushabti? Cannons. Cannons are great for taking out Ushabti, especially if you have a warrior priest with Banner of Eternal Flame standing nearby, and you've got a fire caster throwing fireballs to proc Kindle Flame. You get a 22% damage buff on your cannons while that Kindle Flame is active, and they do way more damage to the Ushabti. You can actually kill them really fast. Yes. So cannons. Cannons are the answer. Or any unit that can get a good, clean charge on them, honestly. Any of your knights, I would say, like, Knights of the Blazing Sun especially, but obviously Demigryph Knights as well. Yeah, this is something I've had success with against the Wood Elves. You could, with the funds we have, probably afford to take some shields here. Not quite all 3. All 4, rather, but this is the kind of the Bretonia approach, right? It's just to flood heavy cavalry. And just to run at them, basically. And the Wood Elves, because all of their infantry is very light, they're going to struggle against something like this. Now, you do have fire in case you come up against trees. You're still going to have to be really aggressively cycle charging the trees. Like, that would be tough, definitely. This build doesn't have great answers for dealing with, like, Durthu, for example. But you do have some fire damage and high charge, so you, over time, especially if you clean out all the infantry support, you can get some work done. Absolutely. Like 2 to 3 cannons is pretty good if you're gonna go with a cannon build against Tomb Kings. Is there any lore of magic that you wouldn't take against any faction? Nope. I think all the lores of magic are good, and that's one of the best things about the Empire that makes them so flexible. Is, I mean, you can even do stuff with like Lore of Heavens. you know, Lore of Light's really good for them. Even Death Magic, if you're going with like a really kite-oriented build, just throwing Spirit Leeches consistently at enemy cavalry and skirmish units can help win you that fight as well. So yeah, all the Lores of Magic are useful, I would say. Let's see. Yeah, so this is kind of the charge your Wood Elves. In terms of trying to shoot back against the Wood Elves, Marcus is generally a good place to start. And then from there, it's kind of tricky. The Hellblasters, actually, if you can keep your opponent at a distance, these things will tear apart things like Way Watchers, the loose formation. But that 290 range is pretty short, and if we come in here and look at Way Watchers, I mean, their range is not that much shorter. 190, right? So you got to definitely keep them at a distance, but something like this can be good, or mortars on a map that has interrupted line of sight. Yeah, we'll go with the Hellblaster here. And Huntsman. Let's grab some spears. Maybe we grab like a bunch of Free Company too. Honestly, I don't play missile defense builds, so don't really take this as like super great advice. But I would probably take up Right Wizard as well. Throw fireballs, probably want Immobile. And Burning Head also. Let's grab a Warrior Priest to give some buffs. And we also are going to need some heavy cavalry somewhere, so let's grab a couple Empire Knights. I don't have any Pistoliers, which is wrong, so we need some Pistoliers. I don't have any Terror either, I just realized. He's not the best. Big think. Do I need Terror against the Wood Elves? Probably. I don't know. Lore of Death, yeah, you can do some things with Lore of Death, like Spirit Leeching stuff. You're going with a kite build. Anyway. Yeah, actually, if we were to put together one right now, let's see. What would I do? In the past, I took a build that was really dumb. It was something like this. You get all the expensive wagon artillery. You get Boris on a Pegasus. Cut those two. And then... what else did I even do? This build is already terrible. Yeah, that build has a lot of stuff to protect, although the Free Company don't necessarily need protection per se. They can kind of fight independently. It's mostly just the Hellblaster and the 3 Huntsmen that would need protection, right? And I guess Marcus too, to a degree. But why are Pistoliers so good? Because their DPS is so high. So besides grenade launchers, besides grenade launchers, Pistoliers have the highest DPS of any missile cab in the game. That's what makes them so good. You do a lot of damage very quickly. And even good armor-piercing damage, too. 2 armor-piercing damage per shot and 2 shots per volley. So, I mean, 4 armor-piercing damage is comparable to something like an Orc Arrow Boy. Yeah, it's strong. Comet of Cassandora, no. Comet of Cassandora just straight up doesn't do enough damage to be worth it, first of all. And second of all, it has, like, the longest spin-up time of any spell in the game, I think. So it's super easy to dodge, like super easy to dodge. So, no. And Purple Sun, on the other hand, absolutely I do think there is a place for. Especially if you're going, like, with vampire counts, you're worried about getting boxed, like a halberd box. You can take Purple Sun to try and break up that box. But Commodore Cassandora, no, it's way too easy to dodge. I did cover some Empire versus Tomb Kings, yeah, so if you go back and check, I've talked about that a bit already. A few different builds. Oh yeah, I agree. Dual-wielding pistols, very, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I think that's basically it. I haven't been streaming for too long, but honestly, I just wanted to get in a little bit of a Build Factory stream. I know a lot of you guys are going to be watching this after the fact as well, so feel free to leave comments in the description, but I'll leave it a few more minutes for you guys to ask questions. I think I've talked about most of the matchups already. Talked about High Elves a bit, pretty much all the Rush factions, a little bit about Undead, all the different Undead factions, Lizardmen, Skaven, I haven't really talked about too much, but basically Volkmar is the pick against Skaven. Keeping Volkmar alive and just rushing the Skaven, in my opinion, is the way to go. You just go kind of like the build I showed for the Wood Elves with the mass cavalry, which I don't think, unfortunately, I actually saved. Is this the one? Yeah, I think this is it, actually. Yeah, I might actually come in and cut the captain for some other things, like, yeah, Volkmar needs Grand Shield of Faith, for sure against Waywatcher Snipe, or against Giselle Snipe, I guess, in this case. But something like this I've used against both Wood Elves and Skaven, and just the overwhelming mobility, you know, kind of rush, especially with Volkmar, is really hard for the Skaven to deal with. I've had some success. Yeah, I did cover the High Elves matchup already. Basically, Steam Tank Volkmar, good high armor units are good against the High Elves, so Steam Tank and Volkmar, Carl as well, are all very good there. Rubber Duck, I would say, like, the Midland specific stuff, like the Knights of Ulrich and getting Boris to be playable, I think, that can be my main priority if they were to do anything, but a bit, yeah, a bit cost, yeah. I guess I didn't talk about any specific builds against Chaos, but against Chaos, you definitely want to go Carl to fight Shaggoths and stuff. Just like a basic Carl build, to be honest. I don't know if I even have a basic Carl build on here. Yeah, I don't know where all of my actual Empire builds go. Like, none of these are ones that I actually use. I had here, though, let's see. Something like this. Okay, so this kind of a build with Carl would be pretty good against Chaos. This is the one I was showing earlier. Instead of the Outriders, though, specifically against Chaos, because you're going to potentially have to fight like Marauder Horsemen or Hounds in the mobility phase, I would take Pistoliers instead of Outriders. This is a little light on anti-infantry power in this specific one, so I might try and change that up as well. But yeah, you can also do like Volkmar builds, or even with this, if you didn't want to necessarily have to do the healing, you could do something like take a light wizard, actually, take Boris instead, and yeah, we'll come in here, grab his stuff. Let's actually cut this guy. And then, what was I actually doing here? Oh, that's right. Lore of Light, immune to psychology map-wide is going to be pretty nice. Definitely keep Foz Protection. I'd keep Nets as well, and Barona's Time Warp, so you can Time Warp some infantry. And then we're going to go with a little bit more of an infantry-centric composition this time, with a couple great swords. We'll rank down these spears just a bit so that we can afford them. And then we've still got 2 blocker cav. We still got Boris up in the air to be terrible and terrifying. Pistoliers to contest the mobility game. Yeah, you don't even necessarily have to go this heavy on the spears. You could just go with like 3 spears and then 3 great swords. Something like this could also work against Chaos. Just going kind of all in with the counter rush, especially like Barona's Time Warp. on those guys. And you know what, to be honest, we could even cut these guys' chevrons and replace this guy with a warrior priest just for even additional infantry support. Depending on how much you want to spend on him, you know, you can grab. I definitely would recommend at the very least these three: Hammer of Sigmar, Soulfire, and Shield of Faith. Soulfire actually may not be super necessary here. It's better against low armor infantry, so you might not need it against things like Chaos Warriors. So you might want to grab Benediction there instead. And since there's no Lore of Fire synergy here, we're not going to worry about Banner of Eternal Flame. But then you've got kind of the 2 attack buffs. You can layer one after the other, right? And not to mention Phos Protection as well to buff melee defense. And of course, you've got the Shield of Faith. You still got a little bit left over for some chevrons here. So something like that, actually, I might try against Chaos. Or you can also take Volkmar. Now, this is going to be a little bit less monster killing power, so you're probably going to need to come in and grab Demigryph Knights, to be honest, but we can probably cut the Warrior Priest. So we have Volkmar's buffs. Yeah, and then we don't have a lot of points left for Demis, which is a little bit painful, so maybe we cut one of these great swords down, grab another spear here, and then we could do... cut one Pistolier, grab Demigryph Knights. Almost have enough to get the Royal Altar of Griffites. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of these guys without healing, especially. They're gonna be a massive target for damage, but just one unit of 1,400 Demigryph Knights is gonna be pretty easy to pay for themselves. And we just about have enough to get a captain on foot with nothing. I don't know if that's necessarily worth cutting anything here. Or just, you know, spend on some chevrons instead. Probably better, actually, to just spend on the chevrons. I don't know, the splash attacks of the captain are kind of nice. He's just not going to be amazing against chaos characters. Would be cool. It would be cool for the Empire to get the legendary Deathcaster. I think she rides a dragon as well, so that would just be kind of neat, to be honest. But yeah, this is another anti-chaos build here. Yeah. I think that's pretty much everything. We've covered most of the matchups, so if you guys are curious about any, you can scroll back and look. I've talked about just about everything. Yeah. Empire, great right now, to be honest. There's a lot you can do, and keep in mind, I'm just scratching the surface. Like, I literally sit here and 3-craft builds for hours about different things you can do with the Empire, and that's their strength, is that their factions got so much variability, so much different stuff going on, that you can do a lot of different things in different matchups, and it makes it difficult to face the Empire, certainly. So I think that's pretty much it for today, unless you guys have anything else, but that's probably it for me. Not any actual battle action today, but that's kind of the point of these build crafting streams, is just to kind of give you guys a little bit of behind the scenes of like how I make my builds. Next week, I want to try and get a player on to actually like interview them about how they make their builds. I've got a few different players that I would like to have on to do that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me for today. I've got to record some more videos before my voice completely dies, so I'm gonna end the stream here. But thank you all very much for joining. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you're watching this after the fact, of course, be sure to leave your comments down below. I'll get to them as best I can. And that's all for today, so thank you all very much. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.